9:18 a.m. Baltic region. International airspace. The airspace over the Baltic Sea was crowded with tension, even when it looked empty. At 32,000 feet, a U.S. Air Force reconnaissance jet cruised along a carefully planned route, its sensors quietly collecting data while staying just outside internationally recognized boundaries. Call sign: Raven 41. Routine mission. Routine airspace. Non-routine politics. Inside the cockpit, the pilot scanned the sky and the instrument panel, trained to expect company even when none appeared. That's when the radar warning receiver chirped. Once, then again. 9:20 a.m. First contact. The system highlighted a fast approaching track from the east. High speed, rapid climb, military profile. The pilot spoke calmly into the mic. Raven 41 to control. Single fast mover approaching from Russian airspace. The reply came immediately. Copy. Raven 41. Maintain course. You're clear. But the pilot already knew what was coming. Russian intercepts in this region were common. What mattered was how close they chose to fly. 9:22 a.m. Russian scramble. From a base west of Kaliningrad, a Russian Su-35 Flanker E tore into the sky. Its mission wasn't to attack, it was to intimidate. The pilot climbed aggressively, sensors locking onto the U.S. jet long before visual contact. In the cockpit, the Russian pilot muttered, "Let's see how brave you are today." 9:24 a.m. Visual range. The U.S. pilot saw it first, a dark shape streaking in from below, then pulling up sharply into formation off the left wing. Close. Too close. The Russian fighter rolled slightly, showing its weapons load deliberately. This wasn't escort behavior. This was a message. 9:26 a.m. Unsafe maneuvers. The Su-35 cut across the nose of the U.S. jet, close enough to rock it with wake turbulence. The cockpit shook. The U.S. pilot clenched his jaw. Control. Hostile aircraft performing unsafe intercept. Copy. Continue mission. The rules were clear. Don't react. Don't escalate. Document everything. But the Russian pilot wasn't done. 9:28 a.m. The warning shots. Without warning, the Su-35 dropped slightly, rolled inverted, and pulled ahead. Then it happened. A brief flash. A sharp burst. The U.S. pilot saw tracer rounds streak through the air, not aimed at the aircraft, but close enough to leave no doubt. Warning shots. A line had just been crossed. Control. Raven 41. Shots fired. Repeat. Warning shots fired. The reply came slower this time. Stand by. 9:29 a.m. The kill margin. Inside the Russian cockpit, the pilot's heart pounded. This was supposed to end the mission, make the American turn away, but the U.S. jet didn't turn. It held course, steady, calm, defiant. The Russian pilot frowned. You're not listening. 9:31 a.m. Escalation risk. Back at Russian command, alarms triggered. Live weapons discharge in international airspace. The duty officer snapped, "Who authorized firing?" The answer was uncomfortable. It was discretionary. That wasn't good enough. 9:33 a.m. U.S. response builds. In a NATO operations center, red indicators began to light up. 2 Allied fighters were redirected. Rules of engagement updated. No shots fired. Yet, but the margin for error was shrinking fast. 9:35 a.m. The sky tightens. The Russian Su-35 stayed close, almost daring the U.S. jet to react. The U.S. pilot systems updated again. New tracks appeared. More aircraft. Somewhere behind the Russian fighter, others were joining. This was no longer a single intercept. It was becoming a formation. 9:37 a.m. Something goes wrong. Then, without warning, the Russian fighter's HUD flickered. Altitude data jittered. Weapon status reset. The pilot blinked. What the? At the same moment, the U.S. jet systems flagged an anomaly. Not a threat, not a lock, a distortion in shared airspace data. "9:38 a.m. Both sides notice it. Russian ground radar briefly lost both aircraft, then regained them, then lost them again. U.S. command feeds showed the same thing. A gap, a blink, as if the sky itself had buffered. 9:39 a.m. The warning that wasn't Russian. Inside the U.S. cockpit, a new alert appeared. No audio, no alarm, just text. Proximity threshold exceeded. A second line followed. Escalation window active. The pilot froze. That message didn't come from U.S. systems, and it definitely didn't come from Russia. 9:40 a.m. Cliffhanger. there. The Russian pilot saw it too. Not the text, but the effect. His aircraft's targeting reticle faded. Weapons saped themselves. The gun system locked out. Control. My weapons are disabled. Silence answered him. Both aircraft flew on, side by side, no longer threatening each other. Something had stepped between them, and neither side knew who. A Russian fighter fired warning shots near a U.S. jet. The situation should have exploded. Instead, the sky itself intervened. 9:41 a.m. Weapons gone silent. For the first time since the intercept began, neither aircraft was threatening the other. The Russian Su-35 flew steady, but its cockpit was no longer under the pilot's control. Weapons page, locked gun system, inactive fire control radar, standby. The pilot tried to rearm. Nothing responded. Control, this is Red 17. My systems aren't accepting commands. The response came strained. Confirm, you are not engaging. Negative, I cannot engage. 9:43 a.m., U.S. jet confirms the same. Inside the U.S. reconnaissance jet, the pilot noticed something equally disturbing. Countermeasure systems were frozen. Defensive modes grayed out. Manual overrides ignored. The aircraft was still flying, but it wasn't fully his anymore. Raven 41 to control. I'm stable, but my defensive systems are locked. A pause. Then, U2, 9:45 a.m. Command centers realized the truth. In both NATO and Russian command centers, technicians reached the same conclusion within seconds. This wasn't jamming. This wasn't hacking. This wasn't cyber warfare. The systems hadn't been attacked. They had been instructed. A NATO analyst spoke quietly. Someone issued a higher priority command. Another asked the obvious question. Who has higher priority than National Command Authority? No one answered. 9:47 a.m. The sky tightens again. For several long seconds, the two aircraft flew side by side. No radio calls, no maneuvers, no threats. Then the Russian pilot saw something that made his blood run cold. A third presence. Not an aircraft, not a drone. A distortion in the air, subtle but unmistakable, hovering above and slightly behind them. It didn't move. It didn't chase. It simply existed. 9:49 a.m. Ground radar confirms the impossible. Russian ground radar operators shouted over one another. We have an object, no, avoid, directly above both aircraft. Altitude undefined. It's not reflecting radar. NATO feeds showed the same anomaly. Two rival networks, agreeing on something for the first time that day. 9:51 a.m. The second message. This time, both cockpits received the message simultaneously. Clear. Unmistakable. Engagement parameters exceeded. A pause. Then, disengage immediately. No flag, no language marker, no source. Just authority. Chanted 9:52 a.m. Russian withdrawal order. At Russian command, hesitation lasted less than a second. The duty commander slammed his fist on the console. Order Red 17 to disengage immediately. No further provocation. The Su-35 pilot banked away sharply, not in fear, but in compliance. His systems came back online the moment he increased distance. Weapons restored. Control returned, but the message was clear. 9:54 a.m. U.S. jet escapes the corridors. As the U.S. aircraft exited the engagement zone, its systems normalized as well. Defensive aids unlocked. Manual control restored. No anomalies. The pilot exhaled slowly. Like control, whatever that was, it's gone. The reply came quiet. Copy. We're marking this airspace as temporarily restricted. Restricted by who? Another pause. Unknown. 9:57 a.m. After action reality. Within hours, both nations conducted internal damage control. No public accusations, no press briefings, no footage released. Russia did not admit firing warning shots. The U.S. did not accuse Russia publicly, and because neither side could explain why escalation failed. 10:02 a.m. Classified assessment. The incident was logged under a new designation, non-human escalation suppression event, not because of aliens, but because no human chain of command had authorized what happened. The system had acted faster than politics, faster than pride, faster than war. 10:06 a.m. The Russian fighter fired warning shots near a U.S. jet. By every rule of history, that moment should have exploded into chaos. Instead, it ended in silence, because modern warfare may no longer be decided by who fires first, but by who or what decides when violence is no longer permitted. A war almost began over the Baltic. It didn't end because of restraint. It ended because something else stepped in, and next time, it might not.